without further ado, I just want to introduce not only my friend, not only my professional colleague, but someone who has had the passion and the strength to follow the evidence and follow a love for children like no one else. Diane Ravitch. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Randy. It's always a pleasure to be with Randy. She's so smart, and it's such, she's just incredible. She's done wonderful things in leading the union, and she's done wonderful things in being my friend over the years. When we first met, it was when I was in my conservative phase, and she tolerated me. But this is like old home week to be in this building, because I was Assistant Secretary of Education 20-plus years ago. 2000, let's see, it was 1991, 92. This was the building of OERI, and I think that a few of the people here worked in that organization at the same time. And it reminds me of how far I've come in my life, because I began as a Democrat. I joined the first Bush administration thinking that education was nonpartisan, and then finally found myself getting absorbed into a world of testing, standards, accountability, choice, and competition. And over the years, I belonged to 3 different conservative, some might say right-wing, but conservative think tanks, which I now think of as belief tanks. And they all accorded with those beliefs. And I back in 1998, I testified on behalf of the first charter legislation in New York State. But along the way, and again, I was part of the Manhattan Institute, the Hoover Institution's Caret Task Force, and also the Thomas B. Fordham Foundation, and had many friends there. But along the way, I found that the things that I believed in weren't working. I found that the charters that I had testified for and advocated for were doing no better than the public schools, and were draining money from the public schools. That some of the ones that we authorized in Ohio when I was on the Fordham Foundation board were corrupt, so we closed them and opened some others, and then closed them and opened some others. And the evidence wasn't there. I found myself falling out of belief and into a kind of a free fall of what do I believe. And I began looking at my own children, looking at my grandchildren, looking at other people's children, and thinking that all this testing was wrong, that we were over-testing our kids. I began researching differently. I wrote a book a few years ago, actually in 2010, called The Death and Life of the Great American School System, in which I wrote about my own personal transformation. And then as things seemed to get worse and worse, I wrote the book that you saw tonight, Reign of Error, because I think we're at a turning point in public education. And that's about whether public education has a future. I've become a very strong advocate of the principle of public education, because I think it's so wrapped up in the principles of democracy. I think of my own family. I'm one of 8 children. We all went to public schools in Houston, Texas, except for the ones that were bad. They had to go to military school. That was 2 of my brothers. But the good kids got to go to public school. We weren't rich enough to afford the 2 private schools in Houston at that time. But that's the way public school was. There was one thing terribly wrong with the public schools I went to. They were segregated. And then came the Brown decision, and my community, my city, fought it like so many others in the South. And eventually, Houston became an integrated district, as did so many others. And I look back now as a historian, and I think of all the movements that have come through public education that could not have come anywhere else. I think about not only the Brown decision, which transformed American society, and I'm not saying that it was completely successful, because we still have way too much segregation, but I'm thinking also of the gender equity movement, and the movement for inclusion of children with disabilities, which led to the movement for inclusion of people with disabilities. And there were so many other movements that could only have come through public education to transform the society. Now, clearly, we are not a perfect society, but I don't want to lose that crucial institution, crucial for my mother when she came from Bessarabia. She was very proud all her life of having a high school diploma. I wouldn't be here if there had not been public schools. And I look around the country and I see public schools closing in city after city. I see Philadelphia in dire straits, governor slashing the budget so that he can cut corporate income taxes while he cuts the schools. I see a city, Philadelphia, where because of the budget cuts, the school nurses were only on 2 days a week, and a 12-year-old child had an asthma attack, but that wasn't the school nurse's day to be on duty, and the child died of asthma. That was criminal. I think he should have been prosecuted. I think the legislature should have been prosecuted. It's a disgrace when we can afford so many things in the society, but we can't afford to give the children of Philadelphia, the children of Detroit, the children of St. Louis, the children of Kansas City, the children of Indianapolis, good public schools, good neighborhood schools. That's what their parents want. What we have, instead of making the investment of energy, the investment of thought, the investment of dollars, what we have instead of that is that we're turning over school buildings and children to private corporations. Some of them operate for profit, some of them operate not for profit, but they're not inside democratic control. They're not the public schools. There will be cities in this country, if we continue on this path, that don't have public education anymore, or if they have public education, it will be the system of last resort. We have vouchers in 20 states. I mean, the reason we have charters is because the voucher people gave up on vouchers, thought they would never come to pass. Every time vouchers have been put up to a vote, they've been voted down. They were voted down most recently in Florida by 58 to 42. American people don't want public dollars to go to religious schools, and yet now we have 20 states where money, because of the legislature, will go to religious schools, some of which have no curriculum, very few, if any, teachers, and kids are learning things that are based on the Bible and not on modern science, modern history, even modern mathematics. This is not progress, this is regress, going backwards. We talk about improving education, and you're not improving education when you destroy public education. I'm very concerned about the increase of inequality in our society. I think that what I tried to do in the book, among other things, was to deconstruct the narrative of the people who call themselves reformers. And I don't think they're reformers. I just think they've taken the term because what they're doing is not reform, it's actually destruction. But the deform or reform or whatever it is, the narrative says our schools are failing, they're obsolete, they're broken, and that anything else is better than the public schools we have. Now, I thought it was really important to nail that down. And so if you have my book, you know that in the back of the book there are 40 pages of graphs. This is very unusual for a publishing house like Knopf. Knopf is not an academic publishing house. This is like the creme de la creme of trade publishing. 40 pages of graphs that show that if you look at the NAEP scores, the scores today are the highest in history. That's going back over the 40 years in which NAEP has existed. The highest in history for white students, black students, Hispanic students, and Asian students. The high school graduation rates are the highest in history for all of these groups. The dropout rates are the lowest in history for all of these groups. Now, when we made the greatest progress in terms of narrowing the achievement gap was not recently, not during this time of test, but in the late 70s and early 80s. And what was happening then? First of all, desegregation. Secondly, greater economic opportunities for African American families. Third, the enrichment of many schools in the inner city with Title I funding. And fourth, an increase in early childhood education. One would assume, if you looked at the evidence, that we would be doing more of the same. We're not. Instead, we have today an agenda, a national agenda, of testing, accountability, choice, and competition. And I hit my head and I think, wait a minute, That's the same agenda we had back in 1991 and 92 in the Bush administration. How come we have the Republican agenda? That's our national policy. We've been trying this now for 20 years. It is the status quo. When you have the federal government, the Gates Foundation, the Walton Foundation, the Broad Foundation, the Dell Foundation, the Arnold Foundation, and about 100 other foundations all on the same side, vast amounts of money promoting the privatization of public education, promoting testing, accountability, choice, competition. That is the status quo. So what we have going on is a grassroots resistance. Parents are rising up and saying, but we want our neighborhood school. We don't want it to be closed. There's a rebellion going on right now in Newark, New Jersey, where the parents in New Jersey who have not had democratic control of their school now since 1995 have said, we don't want our schools to be closed. We don't want our schools to be privatized. That's huge. Parents in Philadelphia, outraged at the closing of their schools. This is happening in city after city. Will it be enough to overcome the power of the U.S. Department of Education, the power of the billionaires, what I call the Billionaires Boys Club? I don't know. But sometimes I wonder, what if that $5 billion that went into Race to the Top had been dedicated to a program that said, we'll have a competition, and the money will go to the districts that come up with the best, most actionable plan to desegregate their schools? We would have a different America today, but we don't have that one. Instead, we have $5 wasted billion trying to measure everything that moves. And you cannot measure teacher quality by the test scores of students. What you're really measuring is who's in the classroom. And the teachers who are in the most affluent districts look good, and the teachers who have kids with disabilities look like bad teachers. The kids who are teaching English learners look like bad teachers. The kids with gifted children look like bad teachers because their kids are already at the top and they will not see growth. Don't know whether this is a period of madness, a period of greed, or a period of insanity, or all of the above. But what we're doing is not improving life for children. If we wanted to improve life for children, I would recommend the last third of my book, which is about what I call solutions. We would begin with a life course approach. And a life course approach would mean, for example, prenatal care for all women who can't afford it. Why recommend prenatal care for all women? It's because when women do not have prenatal care, they are more apt to have children, babies born with developmental deficiencies, cognitive delays, and also babies born dead. Now, if the babies are born dead, that's terrible. It's a tragedy. It's also a tragedy if they are born with preventable cognitive deficiencies. That's preventable. That's cheap. We could handle that. That's like pennies off the tables of some of these billionaires who are privatizing our schools. We should have programs that give attention to children from the time they're born to the time they reach pre-K. Pre-K right now is the story of the day. It's all over the newspapers. Mayor de Blasio is recommending it. Everyone's recommending it. That's great. But what about that crucial period from birth to pre-K? We can't forget that either. And the mothers who need help should have help, and the children who need help should have it. They should have the medical care they need. Every school should be attached to a health clinic. Children should have regular checkups. I mean, I could go on and on. These are the kinds of things we should be thinking about. We know what to do. If we look at the high-performing nations of the world, none of them have charters. None of them have vouchers. All of them attend to the health and well-being of their children. There are so many things that we could be doing that we're not doing. Instead, we're investing billions in measuring people. I'm very concerned about the whole obsession with measurement because I'm fearful that we are creating a society of limited opportunity. We are labeling children by their test scores and limiting their possibilities by saying, you are not good enough, you're in the bottom half, you have limited opportunity to advance, you are a 1, you are a 2, only 3s and 4s count. This, to me, is very reminiscent of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. There they labeled the children in the test tube. They were alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilons from inception. We labeled them by hiring Pearson to do it, or McGraw-Hill. This is wrong. This is not a land of social mobility. This is not a land of opportunity when children are told from the get-go that they're not good enough because they're on the wrong half of the bell curve. I notice, one of the early pages of my book, the foreword, quotes John Dewey, that what the best and wisest parent wants for his child is what we should want for all the children of the community. And anything less than that is unlovely, and if left unchecked, destroys our democracy. And so throughout the book, I found myself wondering, if you had lots of money, is this what you would want for your child? If you could send your child to the Lakewood School, if you could send your child to the Sidwell Friends, if you could send your child to this private school or that private school, would you be measuring their teachers by the test scores of their students? No. No other country in the world is doing it. Would you be giving tests every year to children and telling them that there are 1, 2, 3, or 4? No, they don't do that. There are two different paradigms of education. One paradigm is the one we have now. It's the status quo. And the status quo says we have to rank and rate everybody and parcel out opportunities based on their ranking and rating. There's a different paradigm, and it's the paradigm that I consider a better one. And I say, I dream of a world where the purpose of education is human development and recognizing that every human has the potential for development. And we don't know where that potential is. We don't know where it's going to go. We used to talk about late bloomers. There's no chance for a late bloomer anymore because now they're labeled in 3rd grade. If they bloom in 5th grade, it's too late already. So I dream of a world of human development, human potential, where every child is loved, where we have a pedagogy of kindness, and where we respect the people who teach children. What I'm seeing, and I travel a lot around the country, is state after state passing laws to hurt teachers. State after state saying, if you earned a master's degree, we pay you nothing more because we don't value education. If you have more experience, we don't want you because you cost too much. Sometimes I think some of these states are run by fellows in a back room who get together and say, have we done enough to punish our teachers today? This has to stop. We're destroying teaching. Wherever I go, I hear people in the ed school world saying fewer and fewer people want to be teachers. They see what's happening. They see the disrespect that seeps on teachers. If we don't have teachers, if we don't have experienced teachers, if we don't have a pedagogy that respects the integrity and the possibility of every single human being, we won't be a better country. We'll be a worse country. I want us to be a better country, and that's what I'm fighting for. Don't know how much longer these knees are going to hold out, but I'm still blogging it, even if the knees go. Thank you.